says good to go. All right.
Are you ready, Jake?
Yes.
All right, I'd like to call this joint Whitfield County Board of Commissioners and the Unified Planning and Zoning meeting to order for November 27th. I'll hand it over to the Honorable Chairman Litterdale.
Thank you, sir. First order of business tonight is to declare we do have a quorum. Eric is away tonight. Second order is to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Any additions?
So moved.
So moved. First, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Tonight, we do have a very heavy agenda. We have 5 issues in the county, plus 1 unified zoning ordinance amendment that the county needs to review, and the 12 items in the city. First 5 are individuals in the city, and most of them are hospital items. Before we get to each item, we will check to see, is John West here? Thank you, sir. First item is here, the request from John West to rezone from R5 to General Agriculture GA. 3613 Lindsay Memorial Road, Rocky Face, Georgia. This is in the county.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we take a look at this rezoning, the first request is to be rezoned from rural residential to general agriculture. And the purpose of this request is to be able to offer an immediate relative an opportunity to build a home on the subject property. And not enough road frontage exists on this property currently for it to be divided. Therefore, the general agriculture zone district would allow for 2 primary single-family detached dwellings to be built on this single tract of land, since no subdivision is possible. So the general agriculture zone district is the only district that would be appropriate in this area, and we can, of course, see that on the zoning map near the subject property to the east and the west. Looking at the development in this area, we see no issue with general agriculture. The subject property itself has several limitations, of course, with the easement or right-of-way there with the utility lines. And then, of course, we see rural residential in the comprehensive plan, which has no conflict with the general agriculture zone district. So the recommendation from the staff is to approve. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions here? Questions behind you? Commissioners? Thank you, Ethan. Mr. West, would you like to come forward? Have any comments?
No,
That's it?
that's it, no, just trying to build a house for my son and his family, so,
Very good. Thank you, sir.
all right, thank you.
Anybody else would like to speak in favor of this request? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Therefore, we will move on to the next item. Ms. Eileen Kelly and Jean Finney, are they here? They're not here. We will table that until next month. Mr. Teddy Higginbotham? Yes, sir, thank you. Mr. Higginbotham wants to rezone from R5 to R6, a tract, 759 Townsend Lane, Tunnel Hill. This is in the county. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You can see the subject property there on the zoning map with this request to be rezoned from rural residential to transitional residential. And if we look at the subject property on the zoning map, you can see the R5 rural residential zone district is the most prominent in this area, with a couple of island zone districts throughout this area. This rezoning would, of course, create a small island of R6 in this area, but the R6 and R5 zone districts share a number of similarities, being duplexes, as one of those similarities. So multifamily use is permitted in the R5 zone district by way of a duplex. So this would slightly increase that multifamily density if the rezoning is approved. Next, we look at development in this area, mostly as you can see on the map there, suburban style development, smaller lots. And we can see the subject property currently contains a quadplex dwelling and has been there for a number of decades. This property used to have a single-family detached dwelling on it as well. The petitioner has demolished that in order to increase the off-site septic system on the subject property to be able to accommodate a quadplex on this tract of land. It is a smaller tract of land for multifamily development, but that the petitioner has done their due diligence on this and made that investment and worked with the health department to ensure that that septic system would be able to accommodate this multifamily dwelling. And with that being done, again, it's too far to extend public sewer to this location, so that's why I wanted to elaborate on the sanitary septic system. With all that in consideration, we can see that the subject property is within the suburban neighborhood character area. Again, given that similarities with duplexes and multifamily already being a permitted use in this zone district, this would be a slight increase in intensity. And given the fact that this building has been there as a quadplex for multiple decades, we can't say that this would introduce a new character to the area as it has existed for quite some time. With all that in consideration, staff recommendation is to approve. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? No, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Higginbotham?
I'm trying to get this rezoned so that it can go back to its original use. This quadplex has been there since the mid-'70s, and it needs to go back to the way it was zoned in its original use. So it's not like anything has really changed.
Okay. Very good. Anybody else like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Very well, we'll move on to the next. Grant Family Properties, okay. Just check and see you're here. Grant Family Properties is seeking to rezone from C2 to C1A, parcel on 106 Wildwood Road Northeast. This is also in the county. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We can see the subject property here on the zoning map as part of a larger C2 general commercial zone district, of course, along the Cleveland Highway in this area. And this request would be to go to limited commercial C1A. And the petitioner's request is to be able to create more flexibility in permitted use for the subject property than exists currently in terms of residential and commercial. The C1A district is a unique zone district that was originally intended to be used for areas abutting the downtown area in the city of Dalton, sort of like, for instance, Thornton Avenue, where you have a transition between residential and commercial and a blend of those uses for certain limited types of commercial retail and offices that would occupy buildings that either were single-family dwellings or would be built to look like single-family dwellings to maintain the integrity of those neighborhoods in those transitional areas. So looking at the subject property, we can see that the subject property currently contains a single-family detached dwelling. You can see there toward the rear of the property, and you can see the corner lot along Cleveland Highway and Wildwood Road to the north. Of course, also point out a couple of other commercial developments in this area along with the zone district as well as residential. Future development map in this area is emerging suburban character area, but of course, as we noted earlier, along Cleveland Highway, I think most are familiar that this area is an area where there is a significant amount of commercial zoning and land use, so most of those properties along the highway are either going to be a higher density residential or a commercial. And in this case, general commercial being the most significant zone district. With all that in consideration, the staff recommendation for this request is that the rezoning be denied in order to maintain the consistency of the commercial zone district in this area, based on the factor that any potential redevelopment of this property could be done through subdivision with a site plan for the future use if any rezoning would need to be accomplished versus using C1A to mix residential and commercial or create that diversity on this property. Happy to answer any questions.
I'm a little,
Would that not be less, less than the C2?
It would be a reduction in intensity, but it would allow for a mix of residential and commercial in terms of
We're
light.
doing that right down the street at Patterson Farms, residential and commercial.
Right, that would be but the planned unit development's a little different than the C1A zone district.
Can you go back to the, the slide, the aerial?
okay, what is the potential? Again, you mentioned subdividing.
Right, so as it currently stands, the property could be divided such that if there was an interest in developing the eastern side of the property for residential, and that could be divided, and a request could be made to rezone that for residential land use. And if there were a desire to keep a commercial character along the highway, along Cleveland Highway, for instance, the corner lot there, then that could be left as is. And would give the greatest amount of commercial flexibility.
So if they use the property as it's used now, it can stay as, I mean, cannot be changed then?
Well, correct. If it were to go on now, the single-family dwelling on this property, if it's still occupied or continues to be occupied, would just be a non-conforming use.
It would be a different entrance, right? It would be a different entrance.
If they wanted to build a commercial use on the subject or on this
No,
property.
If they build a commercial site on Cleveland Highway and a residential on the
Wildwood,
Wildwood,
I think that is the address.
It's likely that because they have access along Wildwood, that they would be required to create access on Wildwood regardless of the development, any future development.
So the primary basis of your concern is introducing a residential component into a commercial zone tract?
It's more so utilizing the C1A zone district outside the parameters from what it was intended to be used for.
Is there another zoning option that they could use that would allow the petitioner to accomplish whatever it is that they're trying to do?
If there was a site plan, yes,
yeah. We don't know what the intentions are at this point.
that's correct. It's mainly speculative.
I guess you can explain that.
Right.
this
The
point,
petitioner
they-
may be able to better explain their.
But they couldn't sell the property as it is now. They could keep using it, but they couldn't sell it. Because it's C2.
They can sell it as a C2.
It could be sold, yes, sir.
Yeah, I
And any nonconformity
home.
would,
Not for a mortgage.
that's correct, right.
That's what I mean, I'm sorry. Any other questions?
Would a C1A designation allow for a mortgage to be obtained on the residence?
No.
Well,
We've run into that issue before. Anytime you have a C1A designation for a strictly residential property, if it's single-family residential, then generally mortgages are not lent.
but if they divide the property, they could.
If it was, right, if they divide it and then individually zone for the specific type of residential that they want to develop, that's correct.
If that the intention is now, we don't know what the intention
We'll
of
find
the
out.
owner.
Correct.
Maybe they can explain.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example of what else would be listed as a C1A? Like, what's something else, what's another piece of property in town that would be a C1A?
Gene?
His dentist office on Thornton Avenue, where he lived in the office where he had his dentist.
Yeah, 500 Thornton Avenue.
Down there for C1A.
is there now.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.
Okay, Grant Family Properties. You heard the discussion, any comments?
I just want to make sure that everyone's clear. The intention of this right now is to get it rezoned because there is a single-family residential dwelling there, and it's had the same tenants for years. And if those tenants move out, it's my understanding, with it being a C2, I'm not able to continue renting that property. I would have to have, it would be commercial, so it'd have to be sold or rented as a commercial building. And we'd like to maintain that as a residential home for now. Also, we think that it's more conducive for the neighborhood with how the land is laid out, and it's at the entrance to that subdivision, that having it more restricted commercially is better for that community than having it a C2. But the biggest reason right now is because there is a residential property there, and we'd like to continue with the rental on it if the renters were to move out.
So it is presently rented.
It's currently rented, yes.
Would you be amenable to subdividing the property and changing that to R2? That piece of property, then it would be ongoing.
I have no intentions of wanting to do that, because we do want to sell at some point. But for right now, we thought this would also protect if someone did come, to buy the property, that going from a C2 to a C1A could give them that option of rezoning the front part or using it as commercial and then still having the residential for the house if they choose to keep the house.
Yeah, because that would limit the, potential purchasers, that 1 point whatever acres. If it was only 0.6 of an acre commercial and the other was residential, they'd probably want the other,
Right.
all on your thinking.
And not to be hard on anyone who might want to buy it in the future, but then if they wanted to rezone the whole thing back to C2 or whatever they wanted to do, that would be up to them. Right now, I'm trying to protect that residential house that's there because that's, that's the only income that we get from that piece of property, but are looking at in the future of selling it, so.
That's true, but that's a non-conforming use that can continue, even if the renter changed.
Even if the renter changed
Sure, I mean, this can't be expanded, but.
within 12 months, obviously.
Right.
Jean, did you have any other insight you wanted to?
Say that while it's C2, if someone's occupying that single-family home, they can continue to do that
Right.
from now until the end of time, as long as there's not a 12-month period where that use lapses. You could also, because it's zone C2, put a commercial use on that property along with that residence. Nothing is to prevent you from doing that.
Okay.
So,
But if the current renters, and they've been good renters, move out, and we choose not to, if it's a while to buy, to get a good renter, because we've had, on the first part of that property, at one point, we had a house on it, and the renters were so bad, the house had to be torn down. And so that's another thing is, would that house just sit there for a while? But just the other reason is thinking it's better for the community. I've heard from some of the neighbors that a C1A to them is a lot better because it's more restricted than being able to do a C2. So we're looking at protecting both parties, ourselves and that community.
Okay. Questions? Commissioners? Have any questions over there?
I can continue to be rented as a resident.
Yes, sir.
even if I-
Unless the current ones move out, correct?
No.
You can?
Window after
So
they
that's
move
not the
out.
information I was given, is
got
that
the
once
wrong-
they move out, we could not continue renting it
No.
to them
You've got
You
12
can
months.
continue.
long as it's not
Somebody's
empty
got to
for
rent
12
it within a
months.
12-month period.
within a 12-month
Yeah, if they move out, you've got 12 months to get another renter, as it is right now. Gene, what's the types of commercial activity would be prohibited in a C1A versus a C2?
I'm trying to think of something that, a lot that small, probably nothing. C1A would allow professional office.
Yeah.
It's so small that I don't think you could have a convenience store or anything like that there.
Okay, but as it is right now, let's say,
You can go,
I mean, my father's here with us. Let's say I decide I'm gonna take over all that. He's gonna give that to me. What if I want to build a condo or something? Am I able to do that? I can't do that on a C2, can I? So I'm thinking down the road, what would I do if we decide to keep the property? And that's one of the things also, a C1A would give us that flexibility if we did decide to do something like that, so.
I get it.
Okay. Other questions? All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Very good. We will move on to the next issue. This is change the unified zoning ordinance. No, sorry. This is Hamilton Medical Center.
Bunch of track.
Tom, right? Got him there. A lot of tracks changing from C1 to general commercial C2, 30.41 acres. I'll let Ethan explain from there, and this is in the county.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we can see here, the subject property is a significant size made up of a number of commercial tracts of land. You can see on the zoning map here, a total of about 57 tracts of land altogether. And this request would be to rezone from neighborhood commercial to general commercial. And the reason for this request is that Hamilton Medical Center, of course, operating the hospital and other medical institutions within this area, making up the subject property, has been zoned in nonconformity for a number of years. And the petitioner is requesting to have these properties rezoned to general commercial in order for them to become conforming. And when we look at the this entire district essentially that would be affected, you can see the neighborhood commercial district there in the center where the subject property is outlined. But you can see to the east and to the west, the C2 general commercial zone district. So we can see that C1 and C2 commercial zones are prevalent through this area. And again, the subject property, a number of these tracts of land that are already developed are developed for hospital-associated or affiliated uses or medical institutions, which would be non-conforming in the current neighborhood commercial zone district. And of course, the intent of the neighborhood commercial zone district is to be somewhat of a more limited commercial zone district that's specifically geared more toward providing goods and services that are in near proximity to neighborhoods, as opposed to creating general commercial zone districts adjacent to neighborhoods. But when we look at the subject property and its existing development, I think most people are familiar with this area. This is less of a neighborhood commercial area and more of a general commercial area, because most of these uses, again, are associated with the hospital and medical offices. Next, we take a look at the comprehensive plan, and you can see here the subject property is almost all entirely within this medical district within the Joint Comprehensive Plan. And when we look at that in terms of what this property is used for, of course, the medical district is built around Hamilton Medical Center in the comprehensive plan, and you can see of course, the continuity between the medical development and the comprehensive plan that already exists in this area. The zone district that's most fitting for the hospital and all its affiliated uses would be general commercial. There are a few tracts of land, I will point out, that are within the suburban neighborhood character area. Those tracts are largely undeveloped, and the tracts to the north in that suburban zone district are largely undeveloped, and there's a fair amount of environmental factors that limit development toward the northern end of this subject property. Of course, any undeveloped tracts of land would have to meet the same exact setbacks and buffer standards as any of these would be adjacent to any residential zoned or developed property. So any future development of any of these tracts of land would be held to, of course, the current general commercial standards for all buffers, setbacks, parking, et cetera. And here again, we can see just an overlay highlighting all of the tracts of land comprising the subject property. And we can see the various different institutions that make up the subject property here. And this includes there's several items on the agenda tonight, and for efficiency from staff standpoint, the staff recommendation for all of the items associated with Hamilton Medical Center and Royal Oaks for rezoning C1 to C2, the recommendation is favorable based on the existing development, the surrounding zoning, and the conformity that this would help to correct. And also, again, the last overlay that you can see there are the individual pieces of the subject property that make up the various different pieces from Royal Oaks to the different Hamilton Medical Center affiliates. So again, staff recommendation is to approve, no conflict cited with the comprehensive plan. Existing development would be conforming with the requested zone district, and the current zoning of the property leaves a number of these tracts non-conforming as it stands. Happy to answer any questions.
That will allow the hospital also to lease the property like they did with Hamilton's, with the apartments. Land lease the property for commercial uses.
Lease the subject property for commercial?
Any of those tracts.
But it would essentially work the same. From a zoning standpoint, it would just create conformity. So they would be able to lease regardless of C1 or C2. So that I wouldn't expect affect leasing ability. That should stay the same. And this rezoning does not include the apartment development that you see on the zoning map. This is just affiliated with their medical offices and some of their undeveloped tracts. And I will mention that part of these, you'll notice there's 2 items on the agenda for this same exact rezoning. That is because part of these are currently in the unincorporated county, and the other tracts are currently in the city of Dalton. But as you'll see later tonight on the agenda, they are requesting to bring all the tracts within the county into the city through annexation. Staff recommendation is to approve. And any questions?
Any questions? All right. Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.
Mr. Minor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Planning Commission, I'm Tom Minor. I represent Hamilton Healthcare System and their related affiliated entities. And I think Ethan's done a great job of sort of presenting the issue, and there are several more items on the agenda later tonight, and we can talk about those then, but I'll try to just summarize all of those right now, just to make it a little easier to understand. This was brought to the attention of the Hamilton Healthcare System, and apparent non-conforming use. It's been that way, best we can tell, since the comprehensive plan came about, and they were initially zoned that way. So the property's basically trying, the system, Hamilton Medical Systems, in the process of doing some additional construction, as you probably know. And so the idea is to try to make these non-conforming uses conforming. They're all either the hospital complex for the main campus or affiliated medical office buildings that Hamilton or its affiliates own. And so going through the agenda later on tonight, you'll see there are quite a number of tracts that go from C1 to C2, both in the county and in the city. Once we started down this process, then there was a lot of conversation about whether it would be better to annex some of the properties into the city. And I would like to also very much thank the Planning Commission staff, Ethan and Jean, as well as Mr. Civic and the city manager, Andrew Parker, for their work on helping the Hamilton Healthcare System think through this process of the annexation and the de-annexation, as well as the rezoning of all these multiple tracts. So it's quite a large project when you look at them all in total, but basically the intent is to try to get all the properties on the Hamilton campus in the city. It doesn't really have a tax effect on anything. All these entities are nonprofit. So the main the main driver behind that conversation was the lofts, the new apartments, which are currently located in the county. And so the idea was that it would be better suited for that entity to be located within the city, so they could get city services, city school system, et cetera. That led to a host of a lot of different conversations, including de-annexation of another tract of land that you'll hear about later. But the whole purpose of this really was to try to get the conforming use on the zoning map for the hospital, main hospital campus, and all of its affiliated entities. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. in
Does
detail.
non-conforming status hinder or prevent the hospital from issuing bonds if they chose to do that for construction financing?
It hasn't in the past. It would be one of the considerations that the bond underwriters would look at, but in the past, I'm not aware of it bothering the bond rating.
Thank you, sir.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anybody else like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Very well. We'll move that over. Next and last issue for the county commissioners is to hear an amendment to the Unified Zoning Ordinance, mostly concerning commercial poultry and swine operations. Nathan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request here, of course, is not a rezoning or an annexation. This is a text amendment to the Unified Zoning Ordinance, or at least a proposal to amend the Unified Zoning Ordinance specifically to address poultry, commercial poultry farming and commercial swine farming operations. And essentially what this proposal would do would be to first set forth definitions to define what does commercial poultry and commercial swine mean, so that those can be defined and determined. Then, of course, there are other amendments to the ordinance that would need to be made, and currently this request would affect the city of Dalton and the city of Varnell in order to not permit these types of uses within incorporated city boundaries. And while this is a unified zoning ordinance, there are some differences between the incorporated areas and unincorporated areas where certain uses may or may not be appropriate. So this would create the opportunity to define those uses and then to address that through the permitted use table, specifically for the municipalities within the unified zoning ordinance. The staff recommendation is to approve as presented.
No questions?
Would that affect any properties that are presently on the process? Like the property in Varnell, for instance?
I believe that would be a question for the attorney at the time to determine the vested right as to whether or not any permits have been requested.
Oh, it's the attorney in Varnell?
Yes.
Oh.
They would have to determine a vested right, if a vested right had been obtained.
So just to summarize, basically, you're identifying exactly what commercial poultry farming is, commercial swine farming, and then limiting that is to not be permittable within the city limits of Varnell and Dalton.
Correct.
Who would be responsible for defining what a large-scale industrialized production system is? When you say it'll be defined by who? The city council or city councils? What? I mean, that's a pretty broad definition. So what is, Robert, what is considered a large-scale industrialized production system for raising birds and swine? What's large scale?
I'm not sure.
So who would be responsible to define that?
Commissioner Thomas, I think the way that we can handle that to create more specificity here and what you're alluding to would be to follow the USDA's definition of a concentrated animal feeding operation, which is defined by animal units. And we can use that more specific language to make sure that there would be absolutely no question as to what the threshold for these operations would be.
A couple of months ago, someone came to the commissioners meeting talking about mega farms. So I'm trying to understand, can somebody build what, so that's what I'm wanting to know. So I guess, who will come up with that?
You're
Ron?
asking for more clarity on the definition.
Definitely.
Yes, and also, I'd like to see a map of the city of Varnell and city of Dalton. Not tonight. Because for years, that Varnell area, Cleveland Highway's been farmed. What brought this about? This request from the cities?
They came before us and asked if we could address this in the zoning ordinance to prohibit that specific commercial and swine operations.
Who is
in
they?
The city.
Varnell or the
City.
city of Dalton?
City of Varnell and the city of Dalton.
Wonder why they're just now doing it.
So we need to, I guess what I hear from you is that we need to wait till this is defined before we
So
I think before the Board of Commissioners can make a decision, it's got to be pretty specific.
Ethan, if you look up USDA, what's considered a large farm, it's not necessarily units of animals, it's a gross revenue number generated by the farm. And it's like over $1 million. So I'm not sure what the acronym GCFI is, but it's $1 million of whatever that acronym represents to the USDA. So, John, that's kind of over $1 million is what they classify as a large farm.
or it's any farm that does it now.
Yeah.
$1 million today and.
So do we need to further define? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
This is- gotta fix together.
Because most of the farms that they're producing now have more than $1 million in revenue.
Basically, we're wanting to do away with, in this situation, telling somebody that's owned land for years that is being used as a farm, that they can't, can't do it anymore. Basically.
Just because they've been annexed. Some of them,
So Ethan, can we table this for further definition, or what do you suggest?
Certainly. I think it can be tabled and we can work on those definitions.
Any other points?
I'm fine with that.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else have, in favor of what we've just talked about? Anybody opposed? So we will be tabling this until we get further definition of the large size, large scale. And that is the end of the issues that the commissioners will sit in with. I'll leave them on there. All right, we have 5 individual requests in the city of Dalton. We will go with those first and then deal with the Hamilton Medical Center ones and then a Kobayashi annexation issue. First one is Juan Figueroa. Is Juan here? Okay. We'll call you in a second. We just want to make sure you're here. To rezone from M2 to R7 attractive land on Waring Road, and this is in the city.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe we discussed this item at the last Planning Commission meeting, and the petitioner was absent, so we can very quickly run through this once more. The subject property, this request currently is to be rezoned from heavy manufacturing to high-density residential. And essentially, the petitioner's proposal is to bring the subject property into conformity. When we look at this area, we can see that it is within the city of Dalton there on the boundary map. Also here, you can see the existing development in the area. You might be familiar with the North Oaks community with condominiums just adjacent to the east. Currently, the subject property does have a multifamily structure on it that has been there for quite some time. And under the current manufacturing zoning, this would be non-conforming, which creates all the issues that we've discussed for other items on the agenda tonight. So the same issues would apply. And when we look at zoning and land use in this area, if you look to the north, you can see some vacant tract of land, and you see single-family detached development. Again, North Oaks is adjacent to this community to the east, which is residential condominiums. And then to the south, we see several single-family detached dwellings. So while there is some manufacturing in this area, this is a small property, not highly conducive for manufacturing use, and of course has historically been utilized residentially. Here we can see the suburban neighborhood character area. This character area would be in essentially in agreement with this rezoning at this location. And you can see that suburban character area applied pretty well to that residential area, even though some of those properties, again, are zoned for manufacturing use. Staff recommendation is to approve, no concerns or conditions, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Figueroa, come on up. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No?
No. That's good. We just need to make sure you're here and you're good with this and you hear the discussion.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Sit down. Anybody else like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Very well. We will move on to the next request. Do you hear Brian Spence rezone from R2 to R5, a tract of land at Frederick Street and Straight Street. This is also in the city.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and just to note, this would be a rezoning from R3 to R5, medium-density residential to rural residential, and the subject property we can see on the zoning map there in the center, close to the Matt Gaston Community Center in the city of Dalton. And if we take a look at the request, the petitioner is proposing to take the subject property, which was formerly developed for commercial use, and to be able to redevelop this property with a duplex and a single-family detached dwelling. Currently looking at the zoning, you can see it's part of this medium-density R3 zone district. And of course, that would allow for single-family detached use only on small lots down to about 7,500 square feet. This is an area, of course, well served by sewer, so that would allow those smaller lot sizes to occur. But if we look through the greater area, you can see the R7 high-density residential zone district is in immediate proximity, as well as you can see the purple zone district being the heavy manufacturing. So we see high-density residential, we see some neighborhood commercial, some other uses in this area being a historic community that is developed with a little bit of diversity in its land use. The Matt Gaston Community Center, again, as you can see on the map, is just to the north. And you can see this public school just to the south from the subject property. So a lot of community amenities in this area. We look at the subject property being essentially, again, it's basically vacant at this point, but historically was utilized for commercial purposes. That would have been a non-conforming use at the time, and now with this rezoning as proposed would create a residential conformity for only residential development for single-family detached as well as duplexes. Again, there's a number of multifamily properties in this area, as well as, again, neighborhood commercial, single-family detached on very small lots. So we don't see any conflict with land use or with any harm to the integrity of the community, the neighborhood that is there currently. Something else to point out in this area is that there is a fair amount of sidewalk connectivity that connects both to the schools as well as to the community center to the north. So all things that we like to see when looking at residential development, particularly multifamily, as proposed here. With all that in consideration, as well as the comprehensive plans, town neighborhood revitalization, this would be an excellent implementation for this character area in the comprehensive plan based on this neighborhood and the proposed redevelopment. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Spence? You know, okay.
I just want to build a duplex and a single-family home.
Okay. Comments? None? Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak in favor? Anybody would like to speak in opposition? Very well. Move on to the next request. Mr. Gonzalo Galvan. He is seeking to rezone from R2, R3, is it? R3 to R5, parcel .29 acres on Mitchell Street, and this is in the city.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We see again another request from the medium-density, single-family residential to the rural residential. Again, the big difference between these two zone districts, really only the main difference between these two zone districts is the fact that a duplex can be constructed in the R5 zone district that cannot be built in the R3 zone district. So essentially, that's the major difference here. With the subject property, the petitioner is requesting to be able to redevelop the subject property with a duplex. Based on the size of this property, it could be divided. However, if you'll note, the subject property on the zoning map is a flag lot, therefore subdivision is not possible. So while lot size may exist, road frontage in order to be able to subdivide this property does not. So the only way to increase potential density of this property would be able to go up in land use intensity and allow for multifamily. In this case, a duplex, which would essentially, again, allow one additional dwelling unit to be added to the subject property than currently. And we see just to the west, the commercial zone district along Glenwood Avenue. And you also see that district to the north and somewhat to the south. And you can see the subject property is part of a small pocket neighborhood. Again, we can see development in this area very much overlays with the zoning ordinance or the zoning map. You can see the commercial to the west and the residential pocket neighborhood around the subject property and more manufacturing over to the east. Again, you can see another close-up of the subject property as it current stands. And we can see this is part of the town neighborhood revitalization character area. This would allow for the petitioner to develop subject property as proposed with a duplex, so there would be an investment to the area. We do not see that this rezoning or the proposed development would have a negative impact at this location on this neighborhood. So with all that being said, the staff recommendation is to approve, and happy to answer any questions.
None? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Galvan?
Hey everyone, I just want to provide more housing for our community.
It's okay, you can put up a duplex?
Yeah.
Very good. Anybody else like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? That said, move on to the next request. Jorge Laredo. He's seeking to rezone from transitional commercial C4 to limited commercial C1A. 1127 South Thornton Avenue in Dalton, in the city.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is similar to a former rezoning, this time going from transitional residential. This is a zone district intended to envelop the downtown Dalton or the greater downtown Dalton area, the C4 zone district. So it allows the same kind of commercial uses that you could have downtown while requiring things like off-street parking course, downtown, you have on-street parking, so parking is not made a requirement. In the C4 zone district, you have to meet conventional setbacks and provide for off-street parking, but with those same kinds of uses that you would find downtown. This request would rezone the subject property to limited commercial, C1A, which again is in sort of office residential type zone district, again intended to kind of serve the purpose of those transitional areas between residential and commercial where we have established neighborhoods. And if we can see here, the subject property currently is within sort of the boundary of that C4 transitional commercial zone district and on the border with general commercial. And the subject property, however, is not adjacent to any other C1A limited commercial zoning. And when we look at the subject property, the petitioner's request is to be able to utilize this property to have residential and commercial use inside the same structure. And what this stems from is the fact that the subject property contains a single-family detached dwelling in this heavily commercialized area. So the petitioner would like to be able to have more flexibility in utilizing this for commercial and residential. So you can see there a lot of commercial development around the subject property, essentially no residential adjacent. Again, another close-up, office, manufacturing, retails, and various different types of commercial use surrounding the subject property. Of course, this has been a non-conforming single-family dwelling, which, as with any non-conforming structure, could continue as such without being vacant for some period of time. And here we can see that the comprehensive plan has this marked as the commercial corridor within the comprehensive plan of the future development map. So future development for this area was planned to be commercial, specifically commercial corridor, which generally fits the C2 to C4 type zone districts, even C1. Based on the existing development of the subject property, again, those same hardships that exist in terms of residential occupation and things to that nature would exist both in any commercial zone district, C1A, C4, or C2. So the non-conforming status of the subject property as residential would remain should anyone intend to use a mortgage to purchase the property. Staff recommendation in this case is not to approve, again, based on the surrounding land use being commercial and the fact that this non-conforming use could continue as such. And the development pattern in this area seems to be, has developed as such in a commercial way rather than a residential. That is the staff recommendation to deny, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
You say it's residence presently of the property?
Somebody's living there?
Not sure if someone's living there. I do know there is a single-family dwelling on the property. Petitioner could better answer to how it's exactly is currently being used.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I do have some comments. Can I step up to the podium?
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disrespect or go out of procedure or nothing like that, but I hope you guys are having a good evening. My name is Manny Mays. I'm actually the manager of the property. The owner was not able to be here, but I am authorized. I'm sorry.
Are we good with that?
I am authorized to speak on his behalf. I'm the one that filled out the application with Ms. Garland, and the owner was there present, and
Okay, very good.
thank you.
Just make sure.
Appreciate y'all's time. So I just want to add some comments to that. I've actually have lived and operated on that side of town with the real estate business probably for over 20 years. And it's been extremely challenging for this particular property that we're talking about, for it to actually stay with commercial use. Anybody that's goes there, Mr. Perez, you know, he's got some property there in the front. I'm pretty sure he can attest that it's been used residential for quite some time now. It's been non-conforming like that for a long time. And the biggest challenge is the parking, that there's not enough parking. If you guys want to pull that up again, I mean, we can, you know, look at it, but I think probably the most parking that I've seen somebody put there, and this was probably about 6 or 7 years ago was like a massage parlor thing. They would only have like 3 or 4 parking spaces. So in itself, I mean, other than an insurance agency, a real estate agency, I mean, you can't really have, you know, not like the dollar store or the convenience store next to it. I mean, I guess I'm requesting for you guys to really consider, you know, allowing the owner to have, you know, residential use to it, because even when he bought it a couple of years ago, we did try to rent it commercial, and nobody wanted to rent there commercial. The gentleman that he bought it from, he lived in it, so he didn't have a problem. But as it is, it's been used residential for quite some time, and I think I may have his name incorrect, but Chief Matt Daniel, I think he's actually the one that told me the dates of when it's actually been last used as commercial, and it's been like in 2017 or something like that.
So somebody's living there now?
Yes, sir.
They want to continue using it as residence.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And are you trying to utilize it as commercial also?
No, sir. They would prefer the C1A status so they can continue to use it residential.
But you can continue to use it as it is?
So
Even without the change?
Correct, sir, but going back to what Mr. Ethan was saying, it's very difficult to get any kind of mortgage other than a commercial loan, and frankly, they don't have the means to do that. They don't, you know, currently as it stands, I mean, they would just like to be able to have more usage of the property and be in compliance. I mean, they are kind of non-compliant by using it non-conforming. And again, if you analyze it, I mean, there's no way that you can get 10 parking spaces out of that. I mean, in order for it to be C4 or C, you know, whatever C2, I mean, there's no way.
So, to clarify, now it's presently used as a residential.
Yes, yes, sir.
You want to continue that usage?
Yes, but I wanted, or the owner would actually like for it to be complying, not non-conforming, by dropping it down to C1A. And history does show that the property has not been used as commercial for quite a long time.
But the C1A is commercial.
Correct. If that's allowed, I mean, if it has to drop down from commercial to some sort of R, what have you, and I'm sorry if we're not using the proper terminology, but if you guys give us a different option, he would just like to continue using it commercial. I'm sorry, residential.
Okay. It also says here the dwelling has been remodeled as commercial?
No, sir. So it's actually 3 small bedrooms, a small kitchen, a small living room.
So there's no commercial investment in it?
No, sir.
Remodeling, okay.
No, sir. It's structured as a house.
Okay.
1 bathroom.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, sir. Anybody else like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Okay. We will move over to the next. I'm missing one here. I'm missing a package here. We're up. Teresa? The next one, this last one, Teresa Acevedo, is not here, so it's tabled. That works. And that finishes the individual requests. We will be going back to Hamilton Medical Center with all their changes. Is that okay to keep going? Keep going? Sure. Breaks? No breaks? No.
Maybe we'll take one before the closed meeting, not now.
Okay. Take it before we go into
Yep.
closed meeting. Next one is to hear Royal Oak Community Limited, 1220 Broderick Drive, which is in the city. From R7 to C2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request would be, again, to rezone from R7 to C2. I'll just very quickly note that the map we looked at earlier did include this property, Royal Oaks, as part of the overall map that you all saw under the Hamilton Medical Center rezoning in the county that we just held a public hearing for a moment ago. So again, this is all part of that larger Hamilton Medical Center affiliate campus. And this request, the only difference between this request and the other request are this property is currently zoned for high-density residential, and they are requesting to be rezoned to general commercial. It is conforming in its current state, but again, to create that consistent subject property, all tracts being zoned general commercial, this would be a permitted use in general commercial as well. So it would maintain conformity and carry that same general commercial zoning as the rest of the property that they're requesting to rezone. Staff saw no issues with this rezoning, similarly to the previous Hamilton Medical Center rezoning. Happy to answer any questions.
No questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe let's get him to do the other.
Can we,
Can we do that?
hey, Ethan, is there any way we can lump these four together?
Three.
Three?
Be glad to.
Wait. Okay, the last two,
Why should differ?
the last two are annexes.
Right.
Yeah. So moving to the next one is Hamilton Children's Institute. Again, moving from C1 to C2 in the city of Dalton, mostly on Walston Street.
Yes, this, again, is part of that previous rezoning, Hamilton Medical Center overall. The difference between, the reason this is two separate items is that this portion of the subject property lies within the city of Dalton, while the previous rezoning with those other contiguous parcels was within the unincorporated county. So again, same exact presentation, same exact analysis, same conclusion, recommending approval.
Okay. And next, Hamilton Long-Term Care, also from C1 to R7. Oh, C1 and R7 to C2, essentially the same.
Yes, sir. Again, same scenario. Those were notated on the zoning map previously shown as part of that overall Hamilton Medical Center campus. Again, same findings from staff analysis and same recommendation for approval.
Okay. And letter O, the fourth one, Hamilton Medical Center to rezone from C1 to C2.
Yes, this is another tract, again, being within the city that is part of the Hamilton Medical Center campus. Again, same map we saw earlier, same findings and same conclusion with a recommendation to approve.
No questions on those four? Thank you. I think we'll move on to petitioner before we jump to the next two, our annex. What you got to add? Same.
As Ethan would say, same as before. I think the Royal Oaks is obviously where Royal Oaks is. Hamilton's Children's Institute is the Anna Sue Shaw Children's Center up on the hill. HLTC is the Hamilton Healthcare System affiliate that owns the 4 nursing homes. And then obviously the Hamilton Medical Center campus, the bulk of the remaining tracts is owned by the Hamilton Medical Center, Inc. So same presentation I made just a moment ago. Could I answer any questions for anyone?
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Before we move on these four, is anybody else who'd like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Very well. Moving on to the next two are both annexations. First one is Hamilton Medical Center Holdings, the lofts essentially, which is in the city.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request to annex the subject property into the city of Dalton. You can see it's currently zoned high-density residential. And of course, again, this being part of the other rezoning, but as it stands, it's zoned high-density residential. And because of the unified zoning ordinance, no matter the zoning that's assigned to this property, annexation would apply and would not require a rezoning as part of the annexation. Just to point out here, you can see the subject property as it relates to the current city boundaries. You can see the city bounds subject property on 3 of its sides. And by annexing the subject property, there would not be the creation of an unincorporated county island. So no issues were identified in terms of service ability to serve the property for the city's perspective, and no issues would be created from the creation of a county island. So the staff recommendation in this case is to approve.
Okay, questions? None? And the next annexation request is from Medical Center, 30.41 acres, multiple parcels to C2. No, they are C2, into the city.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We can see here, these are the pieces of the subject property that are currently Hamilton Medical Center property that are currently in the unincorporated area. And the annexation of these, the proposed annexation of these properties would then bring them into the city of Dalton. You can see there again, the current zoning is C1. Again, the proposed zoning, rezoning for these properties would be the C2. But again, the annexation of these properties can occur, and zoning would follow suit with the unified zoning ordinance. Looking at the subject property and the current city boundaries, you can see there, subject property and the current city boundaries. So with the annexation of the subject property, we do not anticipate there being any issues with service delivery. With all that in consideration, the staff recommendation is to approve.
Just out of curiosity, that one piece of property between the last request and this request that is not being annexed on the north end of the lots?
It is, the request is separate. Sorry, it's on 2 different, that's correct. It would be on, it is being requested to be annexed as well.
But not,
Or, hang
not
on a
this
second.
evening?
No, that's the lofts, correct.
That is the lofts between,
To the south, yeah, directly south.
south of this
There's a
current
walk in
request?
between it.
Because it doesn't show on the previous one. See? On the previous request, doesn't show it.
They don't own it. They don't own it. Just north of this
Just the
side
north of
here.
this particular site here.
There is a tract that is not owned by any of the Hamilton
Oh,
affiliates, which is the
okay.
tract just north of that red tract. Yes.
Okay, got it.
Thought the same, I wondered the same thing.
Other questions? We're good? Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.
Mr. Minor, what he said?
Yes, sir. Thank you again. Yes, the only thing I might add is the lofts is the one that was in red that you were just asking about, Mr. Chairman. And the only unusual thing is that that particular tract is under a tax abatement program, so it's actually owned by the Joint Development Authority, sublet to a Hamilton affiliate called HMC Holdings, Inc. And then HMC Holdings has then sublet that property to a developer in Macon that has actually built those apartments there, which are almost done at this point. So that's the only real thing I might add to that tract. That's the one that it's got 4 nice big apartment buildings on it.
Other questions?
Any questions?
Nope. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak in favor or in opposition? Very well. Moving on to our last request, which is to de-annex Kobayashi Healthcare. Are they in the building? Kobayashi Healthcare?
Don't have to be.
Do they have
They
to
don't,
be?
They don't have to be
They
here.
don't have to be?
Well,
oh. Why not?
this request is a de-annexation from the city of Dalton for the subject property. And if we look here, you can see currently zoned heavy manufacturing. You can see here the current city boundary shows the subject property within city limits on the periphery of the city's boundary. And with this subject property de-annexing from the city, we can see that there would still be a contiguous boundary of the city of Dalton. So this would not create an unincorporated county island or any other issues associated with creating problems with annexation or de-annexation. So the request for this, or the recommendation for this request is to approve.
Any questions?
What is the reason for the annex?
The reason?
I think the petitioner could
Okay,
better address that.
all right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an unusual request to de-annex, as I'm sure you're aware. The Comanche owns the two tracks immediately to the east of this track, which are both now located in the county. They, the one on the far east was their original plant. They expanded into the middle, and there are two buildings at this point in time. They have just begun a building expansion, and they're going to connect the two existing buildings as well as add an expansion across and onto the track to the west. And that created a number of jurisdictional issues, which Mr. Smalley and Mr. Civic and others were quite helpful to resolve as far as fire services and police services, taxation, and the like. So it would be to the benefit of the company to have it all in one jurisdictional area, that is in the county or the city. They would prefer the county because of the inventory tax situation. So that's the basis of the request.
Makes sense. Other questions? No, thank you, sir. Anybody else who'd like to speak in favor? I'd like to speak in opposition. Very good. That's the end of the requests and the public portion of this meeting. We will go into the closed meeting, but before we do, let's take a break. Take a 5-minute break.
And you all are welcome to stay
Yeah.
for the closed meeting, you just can't comment.
Mhm.
Left.
Yeah, I think it's locked.
been living there for 30 years. And they should have. This place is getting so bad. We can't sleep at night. It just bum, 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 shakes you in bed. And I was all good. It's all good. I haven't talked to anybody, 'cause this right here just brought it to my, attention, because I live on this side of the road. I guess, I don't know what you wanna call it, but they're trying to rezone that, but this, on this side of the drive, I live on the wrong side. That's not good, but when I bought the house, I didn't realize that. But, it's like I said, it's just so noisy. So what's-
If they have the right zoning, there's not much that could be done. If they're already zoned and developed, even if they're not.
Swear, man, my kid.
I guess they don't always come forward. It seemed like John was there. They put the man out of business.
Still, on a Monday.
Yeah, it was, you know, it's undefeated.
This is Quinn. Moment of silence. Yeah, I haven't seen, other than people talking, I haven't seen the paper or nothing. I mean, deputies, people. Of course, she's not here, so there you go. That's sad. It is what it is. Ever for the grace of God go we.
Somebody's pulsing. We're gonna be there.
Soon, or later, hopefully.
Hopefully later.
Yeah,
Late.
much later.
That's what it is, yeah.
Getting more. There you go. Hungry.
I wish I had it back. Maybe I put it over here.
We're all back.
Yep, ready.
All right, let's,
You need to bang it, hit that. Use that power.
hit this. Bang, bang. Resident. Okay, the first item we need to review is John West. Let's see. Okay,
This is just to allow family member to build a house. I move we approve.
Second.
Aye. Chris and David. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. John West request is approved. This one is not here, it's tabled. And the third item is Mr. Higginbotham.
Second.
Octavia moves to approve, and seconds by Chris. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Fourth one is Grant Family Properties. Now, this one is the issue with the C1A. The split or could be a split property. comments?
You know, I got a little heartburn on this one, from not allowing it. You know,
Is one in existence already in the city? 500 Thornton Avenue.
Are you talking about the dentist's office?
No.
Which one, 500?
It used to be an attorney's office.
Oh.
And has a residential dwelling in the back.
so here's this my,
If it's a single planning commission for the city or the county, and we're allowed in the city, and we're allowed in the county.
here's my thought on it, is that it sits, you know, just south of it. You know, you got a body shop.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Jamie White's place. You got a house on half of it. The part at the corners could potentially be something commercial, but the site is so small, it really has no real commercial use. I mean, it's a small site, and it's kind of the entrance there. The Kleins live to the north on that larger track, and this is the primary site as you go into that subdivision there north of Edwards Park. And I understand all of Ethan's concerns and the recommendation to deny, but just practically looking at it, I would be okay with it going to C1, but that's just my opinion.
Make a motion?
I move we approve the rezoning request from C2 to C1A.
Octavio seconds. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it. Approved. Okay. Sure. Now, first set of Hamilton Medical Center in the county.
Move we approve.
Bruce moves to approve. David seconds. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Then to amend the unified zoning ordinance with a question tabled for further definition.
It's been tabled.
Okay. Well, we gonna table it, or we need to make a
Move
motion?
to table.
Second.
All in favor of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. No? Okay. Now, the city set of requests. Juan Figueroa. This is from M2 to
I move to be approved.
Second.
Octavio, David. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Next one is Brian Spence from R3 to R5.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Chris makes a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Mr. Galvan, to put a duplex from R2 to R5.
Move to be approved.
Octavio moves to approve.
Second. Second.
Seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Jorge Laredo. This is the one on South Thornton Avenue again, at C1A. C1A, same thing. Staff was to deny. Comments? This is the one that is still developed as a home and being lived in as a residence.
And if I remember, the C4 transitional commercial, Gene, you or Ethan, correct me if I'm wrong, required more parking than actually is there now, right? Is that right? I think he said there were like 3 or 4 spaces, and I think the requirements for C4 might be a little more than that. Is that, I may be totally wrong.
Depends on the use.
Okay.
Really, generally is no parking, or it's
Right.
private parking only.
Well, can he continue using it as a residence?
He can, but you get into that same issue about mortgages and
Well,
that sort of
would that
thing.
be,
that would apply even if it was a
That
C1.
will apply if it's
Yeah.
commercial,
Mm-hmm.
so. And there are some lenders that still do it.
Right, mortgages for C1,
Have to have a larger percentage of,
larger percentage. Or down.
so.
But is it,
If
if
it's-
you've got to have more parking for C4, it's kind of non-conforming now anyway. Does moving it to C1A get it closer to conformity?
I think the parking would still be the same regardless.
Either one for C1 or C4?
But either way, C4, it's not workable.
Well,
Might be willing to go to R5. What if you rezoned it to R5 instead? That would allow them to do a duplex if you wanted to, in the future. And that would take care of the residential situation.
Would there be any issues of creating an R5 island there?
presently used as a
I
residence.
think, yeah, that's smack. It's a commercial corridor. I mean, the kind of future development map says no.
Could you put the aerial? So immediately around this thing is all commercial use, correct?
The house to the north, is that commercial?
That looks like it's a dentist, is that an office?
Everything adjacent is office or some commercial type. But there is an R5 neighborhood
Close.
Behind it,
close by.
yeah.
And on the-
Residential would solve the issue of any mortgage or residential conformities, and that would be solely residential, it wouldn't be the commercial residential.
But do we want to change it to something without the petitioner even being here?
We could offer him an alternative, couldn't we? I mean, I guess he would have to,
We've done it in the past, we've denied it and then said you need to apply for R5.
Because we couldn't change it up here, because that's not what he's requesting. We couldn't change it to R5.
you could,
Now, in intensities,
yeah.
Lesser intense, we
Drop
can.
it down, you could,
And of course, he can say, no, I don't want that, and pull his petition.
yeah.
Without him being here.
Does he?
He did say in the public hearing on the record that he would be amenable to a residential rezone.
Yeah.
But does he have to be present with the city when they go over it? Will they challenge him, or they just rubber stamp?
He doesn't have to be there. The only thing the petitioner had to be here for was the public hearing.
So I would motion that we deny the request to C1A and allow a rezoning of R5.
Second.
Chris and Octavio, all in favor of denial? Say aye.
With the condition that.
With the condition,
Yep. Aye.
That's R5.
R5. All opposed?
So we've denied C1 and approved R5?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, just double check.
Very good.
Yes.
And the fifth one has been tabled also. Now we go into any comments or motions. We could do the first four.
Well, do them all at once.
We're talking about the first four, and then there's two annex.
Royal Oaks, Children's Institute, HLTC, and HMC Inc.
Yes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
David and Chris, first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Okay. Ethan, catch up. The next two are to annex into the city. One's HMC Holdings, the other's Hamilton Medical Center. Lofts is the first one, and the second parcels, I think, are to the north. Is that correct? They were the parcels to the north of the lots. So in essence, they are together.
Second.
Octavio first, Chris seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The last item is Kobayashi Healthcare to de-annex 235, 245 Craft Drive.
Move we approve.
Chris makes a motion. Second. Octavio seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. I understand if they're expanding, I know from a county standpoint, that's a mess when you got different jurisdictions within the same building. Yeah. Okay, we do have a couple of flag lots, or one flag lot. Workers'
Big
comp.
copies this time, so this could read them.
This is reasonable price.
But you gotta turn it right side up for me.
Okay, if you look on your screen, you'll see this property, see where it's close to Kahala Creek High School, up off of Georgia Street. I need my folks up here, who's coming with me?
Oh.
Ron? This property is 62 acres all total, zoned agricultural. And what the Smiths, who are the owners, are trying to do is subdivide this property into 5 different tracts. They're gonna retain the top 30 acres, and they're going to create 2 flag lots, the yellow flag lot and the green flag lot. Ethan, can you go to the next slide so everybody can see? And keep the 2 in the middle. Those are not flag lots. Actually, tract number 1 has already been sold. We've already platted that, already sold it. So we're ending up with 2 flag lots. A 32-acre tract, a 9-acre tract, a 10-acre tract, which are both flag lots, and the 2 interiors are 5 acres apiece, all zoned general agricultural. They've met all the requirements, all the signatures on the plat, so all they need to do is just get you guys to go along with these 2 flag lots.
It's okay with me?
Okay?
Approve. Motion to
Aveo makes motion, second, David seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
You want to throw that at you.
Okay, next one is something a little different that we haven't done in a while. It's a preliminary plat in the city of Dalton. There's a subdivision down off of South Hamilton called Red Hill.
Oh, yeah.
It has 3 different phases, I think, already. This is the 4th and final phase in the very north end of the property. It's, see, I wrote on one of these how many acres it is. I think it's 20 acres, 50 lots. Is that right?
Yeah.
30 lots, 50 acres, 30 lots. We have a team of people, let me give you one, Jody. We have
Yeah, I
a
have one,
team
thank
of
you.
people that meet every Wednesday. It's city fire, county fire, erosion control, stormwater, Jake and I, Kent Benson, city public works. We all meet together and look at current projects. We've been looking at this for quite some time now.
That's a great idea.
Everybody has already signed off on it. The only issue we have is one with city fire, and Jake, what did they say?
So they don't currently have their hydrant spacing listed out in a subdivision in the city of Dalton. It's a maximum of 1,000 feet. Scaling it off, they certainly meet that, but it does have to be listed out before the final plat can be approved. But it's in review phase now, so should they not meet that, they will have to correct it before the final plat is brought before you.
And when you look at this preliminary plat and approve this preliminary plat, what you're allowing the developer to do is to put into infrastructure, water lines, sewer lines, fire hydrants, develop this property in preparation to applying for a final plat. He'll have to come back to you with the final plat because this is in the city before he can get any kind of building permits. So you'll have an opportunity to see him again before.
So move.
Second.
So it is in the city?
Octavio, Chris? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
One more, guys. One more flag lot. Ethan, if you can show this one. This is off of Cohutta Beaverdale Road. This is all total, I'm gonna give you two, David. All total is 50 acres. This is, father and son. The son is getting the top 10 acres
He's
on
not
the north
Sanford.
end of the property.
Thank
His
you.
name is not Sanford, is it?
I'm sorry?
He's not Sanford?
No, not Sanford. Just
Sanford
the
is-
son.
Oh.
His name is Dunningham.
You're dating yourself.
But they only have 100 feet of road frontage.
Oh,
So their only option is to give the son 50 feet with his 10 acres,
yeah.
leave the dad with 50 feet, but in doing so, the dad is creating a flag lot for himself. And so that, of course, has to come to you for approval. We are recommending approval. Everybody signed off on the plat.
Okay.
Except
So move.
Chris makes a motion, Octavio seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
please go back
Anybody
there.
else?
There's plenty of food, so go back there and finish
Yeah.
eating some of that stuff before we go home.
They all made
understand,
fun of
uh,
me for making a plate, so I'm taking some.
Does somebody have a birthday coming up?
Yeah, I think it's the 29th.
I'm not sure.
So happy birthday to Gene.
Thank you very much.
And without any objections, we shall adjourn.